people do talk about it a lot now, but the actual recognition that there is this thing and it exists in the world, social construction, is a huge discovery that we are getting towards a state of perfection. That the fact that we are getting better, that our machines are getting better, that people are getting smarter, that we are being more efficient in our production of work, of things, of stuff, of knowledge, of whatever it is that we're producing, of health, that is a reflection that we are moving closer towards a state of perfection. What I did in the last series, in the last section of the series, in 10.1, is I talked about how that's false. The reason why I'm doing this is not because I'm looking for a state of perfection. I'm doing this because I am continually in the process of self-reflection, of self-improvement. The corollary on a historical level is that history isn't moving towards some goal. There's no purpose. There's no reason why this is occurring other than it is occurring. Other than there are individual human beings in their respective fields in society, in the social sciences, in the hard sciences, in chemistry, in neurology, in physics, in politics, in diplomacy, in interpersonal, organizational. There are people who are in society who help and contribute to transform what it is that this social fabric is, and that their collective work globally is what gets us in a better sort of state of affairs, standard of living, what have you. All of those terms are so economically sort of biased. But it's not that we're getting to a more perfect state. The idea that we're moving towards, and there's popular sort of historical, political discourse on sort of the idea of perfecting, right? But the idea that we are getting towards this notion of perfection is in a sense off. We are getting better. But the fact that there is this perfect existence, this perfect, all-encompassing, beautiful, complete state in which there isn't any antithetical relationships, there aren't any positions of indifference which inhere. That is a very dangerous system of belief, right? It sounds great, but conceptually speaking, it's problematic. So, for Nietzsche, he says that our contemporary discourse, historically speaking, we're not talking about an individual, right? It's completely understandable to say, well, Jimi Hendrix has reached a state of perfection with respect to how he plays the guitar. I get it. We can use these terms sort of colloquially. That's fine. Nietzsche's not an idiot, right? The idea of perfection has linguistic use, right? Sure, perfection in a linguistic sense. We need to get ourselves to a more perfect existence, a more perfect cohabitation. Sure, linguistically, fine. Ontologically is a problem. There is no ontological perfection. It doesn't exist. This is all that is. And with respect to all that is, my knowledge, epistemologically, my epistemic connection to the ontic, to existence, to stuff, is one in which I recognize that I couldn't attain a state more perfect than the state I already have. Thus, the idea of perfection collapses in on itself, right? Now, when you're speaking historically, we have to recognize that the historical progression, and I'm sounding Hegelian here, but the idea that history is directed towards an end state, and that end state is the culmination of all history, really the last page of history, in a grand, I'm going to be really cliche here, sort of utopist, global, egalitarian kumbaya. Wow, that's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And the attempt to even try to get that state of affairs of global universal perfection to happen is precisely the condition for some of the most heinous, atrocious atrocities to ever befall mankind, is a product of that sort of mindset. So, in sum, right, in summa, one has transferred the arrival of the kingdom of God, an immortal kingdom, into the future on earth. It's pulling down. It's the attempt to pull perfection here now, right? In human form, second coming, right? This is a quote from Nietzsche, right? In sum, one has transferred the arrival of the kingdom of God into the future on earth, in human form, like the second coming of Christ. Obviously, this speaks to Christ in Christian tradition. I don't know Islamic belief system to know specifically the discourse on this, and that's a failure on my part, and I will, believe it or not, I will start this year reading more of the Quran to have an understanding, because I really do respect religious traditions, to have an understanding of where their system of beliefs factors into some of this narrative. And in my eschatology video series, I'll be talking about sort of the end game for multiple religious belief systems, so I'll touch on that. But with respect to this discourse, the only story that I know, the only narrative I know, is the Christian narrative, so I'm going to use that. Nietzsche, he's right in conceptualizing it. You are free to disagree with what he says, but Nietzsche's saying, this is the text, this is what he says. One has transferred the arrival, sort of a plane landing, the arrival of the kingdom of God. Where's the kingdom of God arriving? Where's its destination? Into the future. It's transferred it from that, what, on the earth. It's brought the future here now. This sort of picks up on my now. There was a level of my now discussion that I didn't see anybody got. But that's fine, because I like discussion, because it just goes on forever. But the arrival of the future on earth in human form, right? And it is this sort of antithetical dialectic, right? The dialectic between the immortal and the finite. The infinite, the finite manifest on earth, the finite manifest as infinite, the infinite manifest as finite, and so on. I told you it was going to get deep. So, the next bit, morality, when abused, can, 1, condemn this life for the next. We saw that. 2, posit perfection or immortality as the desired goal. We saw that. 3, direct, this is important, 3, direct the historical progression of society towards a state of perfection. Right? So that history itself, it's not just that I have a personal desire, which we know there's a corollary relationship between desire and value, as I said in the last video, towards personal immortality, but that there is a sense in which history, as driven by, history is nothing other than the chronological manifestation of human events, right? That's essentially what it is. That history is attempting to attain its own immortality or its own perfection. Right? That history is directed towards this, right? The assumption is that history is directed towards this, right? 3, the direct the historical, and this is all me, direct the historical progression of society toward the state of perfection. This, for me, believe it or not, and I said this earlier, maybe an hour or so ago in the lecture series, this is actually the foundation for the lecture series that I'm going to do on eschatology, right? The idea that we're going to have various conceptions of what perfection is. We're going to have, based on the misassociation, the descriptive misassociation on the role of morality. We believe morality describes this event as good. You believe morality describes this event, same event, as evil. We are in positions in which we can implement our beliefs and values, not as sort of mundane acts of uploading a video, but of pushing buttons, the big red button, you know the button. And your concept is antithetical to my concept. We recognized in Nietzsche, earlier in the series as well, the fighter disassociates himself from his opponent and also associates himself with the opponent by recognizing the antithetical relationship. So, your concept of perfection, my concept of perfection, antithetical concepts of perfection, and it's not now we're talking about the notion of perfection at an interpersonal level. We're talking about the notion of perfection at a historical level. How does that unfold? The quest for perfection results in the absolute destruction of everything that is, right? It will. That's how this is going to end. That's how it's going to end. Number 4, since the state of perfection is a denial of existence, right? Since the whole idea of perfection is a denial of existence, which you saw earlier. 5, the state of ultimate perfection is the total destruction of all existence. Since minor quest for perfection is a denial of existence, I'm motivated by the desire for personal immortality. I appeal to the institution. The institution tells me, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt. I do that, I do that, I do that. I have to deny in order to get that. For an individual devotee. On a historical level, right? Number 5, the state of ultimate perfection is a total destruction of all existence. Not just one person's existence, all existence. And this is where the eschatological, and I have to get to say that word a lot because I'll be saying it a lot in the next series, eschatological state of affairs begins. Thus, the state of perfection is only attained through the destruction of existence, right? And I think that is detailed. I think that is clear. The idea is for an individual's pursuit for personal immortality, for personal perfection, the individual as devotee has to appeal to their respective religious institutions. On a historical level, on the largest level possible, those who are the social movers and shakers, who are all exist in the black. You don't know these people's names. You'll never know the work that they do, nor should you. Social constructionists transform society, but if the social constructionists themselves have the concept that their work and their effort is leading toward a state of perfection, then there's going to be antithetical concepts with respect to various society competing to arrive at perfection, which can only culminate in acts of war. Why? Because of the inherent association between social and political, as I said in many videos. Very, very a very, very complex concept. No, and I'm gonna try in a second to take it quite a bit deeper, a few steps deeper. So I want to look at that.